All right. Hey guys, sorry, running a bit late today, but here we are. Just going to be working into this piece here, which is one I think I showed a couple of weeks back, with actually just incorporating some characters into this scene, which are going to be drawn over the top to kind of get a bit of a, I guess like a cell style kind of look. And I've also just got two renders here out of Blender, one using Cycles and one using Eevee, because I wanted to just test them, and there are kind of elements of both that I like, so just mixing these two frames together is something that I'm going to have to do at some point as well. But yeah, initially I think we'll probably just work over the top of these just with some sketching, just to get the characters kind of laid in. And then yeah, just kind of go from there. So this is it's a project that I've already kind of got some got characters kind of designed out for in here as well. So I've got a little bit of a, it's been a while since I've drawn them, to be honest, but I do have a little bit of a direction that I want to go with these. So hopefully it shouldn't be, not, I kind of know what I want these characters to be doing in the scene. Again, like this is an image that I originally started a long time ago, so I'm kind of coming back to it a little bit blind and not probably thinking about exactly what I want to do with it quite as much, but just kind of draw into this and kind of see where we get to. also make sure that this character kind of looks correct, kind of sitting on the car hood here and just interacting with that. So just trying to get the gesture kind of correct and all that kind of thing, which is why I like to, with this, I've done a few images in this style, which I'm trying to just, when you're doing this kind of drawing, having this little, I guess, like little white sheet behind things just really helps to kind of, because the lines tend not to stand out particularly well against anything else. General shapes, general proportion, general gesture, kind of nice. Probably actually want to push this a little bit further, this curve of the body. So I've got a character here she's kind of like leaning over, trying to pick up this or drag this like really heavy piece of machinery. a right kind of feel for where the arms need to be and the hands and all that kind of stuff, and then the position of the head as well. Probably actually can bring us a little bit further forward in space, actually. I think just have us standing in front of the pipe there to get the head on the right angle again. This face angle's probably gonna kick my ass. It's made a mistake. I think actually I prefer the line of the chin here, so we're making that more of the center point. It's better. Do have the characters in this project do have a very kind of angular style to them, so I was trying to maintain that in here. I'll work on the actual expression on that face a little bit more later, but I want this piece of machinery to be almost, it's going to be like a some sort of like weird kind of retro sci-fi kind of engine block thing, I think. I've been having the last time I've been working on images of this project, kind of having a lot of fun seeing how much I could push the stylization of this, the kind of the character level stuff over the environments, which obviously end up being really kind of high fidelity because of them being in 3D, pushing a little bit of like paint back into the 3D sections just to make them look a little bit more simplified, because I think they get a little bit too crazy otherwise. But then bringing like an actually like very simple kind of line style. Obviously this sketch is pretty scrappy at the moment, but like, yeah, a pretty simple line style over the top with a pretty flat coloring, and kind of like, yeah, getting a pretty good result from something like that, which has been really fun. Because I think obviously 3D is good at a lot of things, but doing kind of like photoreal stuff with it is not something that interests me as much. I'd rather do something a little bit different with it. And then I think just in terms of the visual style, that kind of like continues across to something like this with the finish of this as well. And just, yeah, I do find it interesting to see how kind of, yeah, not a, stylized is one word, but even just like how loose you can get with the finish over the top and still have it look like a kind of cohesive thing, which I think is kind of fun. Especially if you take, you know, good lighting cues from your 3D. I think that really is beneficial to it. Had a quick panic moment that I thought maybe I was working over a render that wasn't as high res as I thought it was, which would have sucked, but luckily we were okay. Sorry, I got a question there from Golden Honda. Do I ever get the whims to draw paint in a new style, or do I think as I get more confident in your skills, you feel the urge less? It's a good question. I think I do to a point. You still always want to do that a little bit, but I think the more you work, the more you're gonna define your own, start to define your own style. So, and if you have, probably becomes something where you want to, you want to say a certain thing, or you want your work to kind of make people react in a certain way. And I think when you're learning, that's something that you have to kind of develop, and you can't get that straight off the bat. And so, yeah, the more experience you get, and the more you get used to doing work in a certain way and having people react to it correctly, then you do probably feel a little bit less of an urge to go searching for new ways of doing things, because I think a lot of that searching happens because they're not getting like the reaction they want out of their work, or they're not getting the result they want out of their work, and so they go, oh, I've got to do it differently. I think that's part of it. So yeah, I think definitely the more that you work, the more you will just solidify what you're doing into a potentially a more consistent way of working. But having said that, I still do find, enjoyment in just like trying different ways of creating images and stuff like that. And different tools and programs and stuff that come out will kind of get you working in a different way, potentially. So yeah, I don't think you ever stop, but I think, yeah, you do definitely get to a point where you don't have to search for style as much, because of the fact that you're more confident in the way you work, and then also you're just getting results that are kind of better. I think for a designer as well, the kinds of things you design tend to solidify themselves, and you have things that you like that you want to design to, and I think that is also, if you're looking to get a job in as a designer, like that's a good thing, because of the fact that you want to obviously be flexible, you want to be able to work and design a lot of different things, but you also want your work to be recognizable. And so if you're constantly changing styles, then your work's not necessarily going to be, as obvious. It's not going to stand out as much necessarily, and won't have people who are looking at it going, oh, that's this person. So I think it's not, you don't want to always be constantly switching your style up for the sake of it. I think you do want to create a visual identity for yourself. But I think, yeah, a lot of the searching that does happen when you're learning does get replaced by a confidence. But I think, yeah, like I said, I think that a curiosity will remain, where you will probably just play with new stuff for fun, but it will probably be that's a less stressful thing, I think. And I guess, yeah, further to that point, probably from that question, I think like when I was at uni and studying and all that kind of stuff, I think a lot of the styles you try out, you obviously try out styles of other artists that you like, right? Like you look at the people that you want to be like, and you kind of copy their work and all that kind of stuff. And I think in a lot of ways, a bit of your identity comes from the fact that you try and, like, in one sense, you try and rip people off because you want to learn how they do it. But there's always going to be something probably like unique about how you go about doing your work. And I think that's the beginning of that development. Like that's where that uniqueness in your work will eventually come from, is the fact that, it's a bit of a strange way to think about it, but I think a little bit of that, like trying to copy other people and failing slightly is a little bit of that developmental process. Yeah, I guess I don't know if it has changed too much. Like, yeah, I mean, I've never really thought about it that way. Who of the classic, like, who of the masters is someone who you've looked at and gone, oh man, they've really changed? I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts on that, because I think, people do develop, and I wonder what the difference would be between like now and then. And I guess also depending on like the role of an artist, if you're talking about people who are like very much like, illustrators, and then the people you're looking at now who are maybe, working in a different area, like they're working, purely in design for entertainment or something like that, or you're talking about people doing, doing commission work on social media and stuff like that. Not happy with his head, so let's get rid of that. there's going to be an effect in here, which I'm just going to sketch in now with pencil quickly because I find that I get better shapes when I do this stuff kind of quickly off the cuff instead of trying to think about it too much. So that's kind of getting kind of close to where I wanted, I think. There's nothing crazy jumping out at me, but I'm just going to put a very, very quick kind of like silhouette behind this just to get a better read of that against the background. I just like to do that to kind of just check that things are working okay. And it's kind of it's a little bit of the next natural step in this process anyway, in terms of getting some tone behind the drawing. So I do this kind of quickly, but then also with a little bit of care, I guess, because it's something that if I am relatively happy with it, I can get some use out of this. Treading on thin ice here, doing such a large, complicated selection, because it could at any moment just decide to double click and autocomplete itself. Probably gonna jinx myself here, but I'm kind of surprised at how little I had to screw around with the feet on these characters. Feet on people are always like one of my many weaknesses when it comes to characters, but I actually got the shape on these kind of where I wanted it pretty quick, so they're still kind of loopy, but like I said, I'll probably jinx myself now when I do the final line over the top of this. I'll probably spend hours tweaking. So let's just put a little bit of a tone behind that. Don't know exactly what. It's going to be pretty dark, obviously. This character, she's going to get a lot of light coming from the car. That's kind of the key light source for her. And then there's a top-down light kind of over the engine. So I'll have to kind of pick her. Or there should be in front. She's kind of in front of that a little bit. But the engine's kind of right in it. So get a bit of that. So yeah, just getting a little bit of just silhouette read there, just making sure that it all looks kind of okay. And I want to do a bit more effects work and painting into the actual render as well. But that silhouette kind of looks pretty good. Kind of, yeah, that should do the job. So let's just do the same thing with the guy over here. Don't have here, which I don't know if I ever actually rendered out, is a clown pass for this render, which will allow me to very easily select all the rendered objects and, you know, kind of compose the final shot and get objects behind things where they need to be. Might have to go and do that. Try and take a little bit of time, but I thought I had done one before, but I didn't find it immediately when I opened this file. So yeah, I think that works pretty well. Obviously, yeah, he would be behind the car here, so I'll just Yeah, that should look all right. In there. Oh, and the effect as well. Might as well quickly just block out some fill behind that as well. This one's less important. I think this one will work just fine. Dang it. That always happens. In my opinion, what is the easiest position to get at a studio? Oh man. Yeah, I mean, in one sense, I don't know because I've only ever worked in one of those areas. I think like the whole creative industry as a whole is like, it's a very kind of specialized thing, right? Like it's so I think like that's the first thing you have to take away from a question like that is it's all, none of it's easy because of the fact that it is a very specialized industry. Most people working in this industry are really passionate about what they do, so like, you know, the level of skill is always really high. I think like, and if you're looking for like the easiest job, I don't know like if that's necessarily the, I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend that as a tactic. I think the easiest job to get is the one that you like doing the most, because that's the one you're going to have the, you know, you're going to have the drive to teach yourself the skills to get a job in that position. I think that's the best thing to look at. In terms of like VFX and 3D, right? There's probably like, in one sense, there are more jobs in those positions because they require more people in a pipeline. So, and especially in film, if you look at VFX, like at a big VFX studio, you know, you might have, you know, a handful of concept artists, and you'll have, you know, maybe, you know, like 40 people working in compositing, or, you know, you might have like 40 animators or something like that, you know. So there's more people working in those positions because the workload requires huge amounts of people. I don't think that necessarily means that those jobs are easier to get, but I guess like statistically speaking, I guess they are in a sense. But yeah, I think like with any of those professions is a hard one to learn. So really what you want to do is find the one that you like the most, to give yourself the drive to actually go and, you know, sit down and take the time and take the effort and the investment in yourself to actually learn those skills. But yeah, you know, I've never worked, I'm not a VFX artist. I'm not really you know, I use 3D, but I'm not a 3D artist. No one would ever hire me to model things on a film or a game for them. So I can't really speak to the process of that, but I think if you like what you do, it's very apparent in the work, right? Like I think people can tell. All right, so let's get a little bit of final line work in here. I am actually going to grab, how do I want this one? And I'm actually just going to copy this across to a new document and make it a little bit bigger, because it's not the biggest painting in the world, because the render is not the biggest thing in the world. I think for the line worker, I just want to have a little bit more resolution to work with. Uh-oh. Alright, I'm going to have to just quickly restart Photoshop because my scrubby zoom has broken. And that's going to annoy me a lot. So bear with me for 1 second. Just do a very quick restart here. Cool. And yeah, so with the line work on these, I like to keep it as a kind of a direct, I guess, as possible. A little bit of like a opacity jitter and stuff in the brush, but really just trying to keep the line work as direct as possible. Means being like, you have to be really conscious of things like overlaps and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of back and forthing with the lines, but also because these characters are so kind of like stylized in the way that I like to you know, work with their anatomy, which is partially my way of covering up the fact that my anatomy is a bit shit. But it does mean that I have to, sometimes like you, there's a little bit of like, you know, going back and forth with the lines and having to switch things out and stuff like that, and just kind of laboring some of these lines a little bit more than perhaps is interesting to watch, but actually bring those arms together a bit too, because then I can avoid the just having two parallel lines running straight up like that, which I think kind of kills the depth of the image a little bit, which we don't want to do. Thanks, James. Stopping by. Now that you're done with the work for the day. She's dragging a big old jet, well, big old sci-fi engine block thing. Stop asking difficult questions. What are you doing? Oh god, it's one of those lines I was dreading. There we go, got it. I'm just kidding, dude. You can ask as many difficult questions as you want. So this whole project, this whole personal project, is kind of my way of doing a crappy homage to all of the shows that I thought were really cool when I discovered them. So it's like kind of a mixture of like Tintin, Lupin, Cowboy Bebop. So all the characters are kind of like, I guess, my weird amalgamations. Speaking of ripping off people's styles, weird amalgamation of all of the, you know, the main characters in here. So this character, Lace, is a kind of like a little bit of a I guess like kind of like a Faye from Cowboy Bebop kind of character, in the sense that she doesn't take shit from anyone. It's been a while since I've drawn it though, so I kind of have to remember what I'd done with her design. She does have these big triangular earrings that kind of I use a lot to kind of hang around in images to kind of give a bit of extra movement to things, although they often they become more trouble than they're worth because they become these like really weird tangents, but it's alright. Good little animation keys. I guess. So remember, like, often when I'm doing this type of drawing, I always forget, like, you know, to zoom out and look at the scale of where this is actually going to be seen from, which is kind of important. Having a Cintiq to do this kind of drawing on that, I'll say that much. I'll probably end up putting too much detail into these engine bits, just because I like drawing engine bits like this. And I find it frustrating. I just find it a bit, like drawing on a tablet is fine. I just find it a bit more fatiguing, I guess, like, yeah. Drawing on a Cintiq, I find drawing on it kind of, it's different. Like tablets, they're fatiguing for different reasons. I think like drawing for a long period of time on anything is, you know, it causes you fatigue, and if you're not sitting properly, it causes you pain. I find Cintiqs are a little bit harder on your back, and then I find tablets are a little bit harder on your wrists. And like I tend to grip my pen too hard, and so drawing on a both on a Cintiq and on a tablet, I find like just my fingers get tired because I'm just kind of like white knuckling the pen, which is probably not good for me. But yeah, I just find Cintiqs a little bit more natural for this type of line work. It's just a little bit more enjoyable. It just feels a little bit more tedious on a tablet for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe I just feel like I'm actually doing art when I'm working on a Cintiq or something like that. as opposed to just making a giant coloring book. But then it's interesting because like some things for like more painterly stuff, I really prefer a tablet to a Cintiq. Don't know why, but I had a 21-inch Cintiq and I sold it because I just wasn't using it that much. And then recently I've been looking at getting a new one. And I think I'll probably go and get one of like the Huion, or however you say that, ones, because they're really cheap compared to Cintiqs, which are still stupidly expensive for some reason. And they seem good. Yeah, I think I found with painting on Cintiqs, it's like you feel the work you're putting in. Maybe it's because, you know, there's so many more strokes to do and things like that. I don't know. I just drawing on a Cintiq doesn't feel like a task, and painting on a tablet doesn't feel like a task. But you swap those two things around, and to me, they both get tedious and kind of mind-numbing, whereas like I find drawing on a Cintiq, really it's a very engaging process because you do feel like you're very much putting pen to paper, which I like. Fold a Cintiq? How do you fold a Cintiq? I don't know, fold a Cintiq. It's just gonna snap. But I guess, yeah, you could like put it down on the table, right? Just in front of you and just, yeah, not look at it. I guess you could. I don't see why you wouldn't. Maybe if you could like limit the area of them or something. But yeah, I think like a 16-inch Cintiq would be like, I think that would be too small. Only just because it's like this, you know, the screen is right there in front of you, and I think you'd end up squinting at it. But I think 22 or like, you know, 21 and a half, as they all actually are. I think that's like the sweet spot. I think any bigger than that, and you do end up having to move your hand way too far to do anything. But yeah, I was looking at the looking at like the Huion 22-inch ones. They're like, I think they're like $800 delivered, or maybe a little bit closer to $900 delivered, like Australian. And then you look at like the equivalent Wacom with the same specs, and like the build quality on the Wacoms is definitely better, but the screen quality doesn't seem to really suffer that much. The Huion screens seem really good. And yeah, like the equivalent Wacom is like $1,600, $1,700, and it just doesn't make sense. I had a look at the XP pen ones, and for the dollar to dollar for the same specs, they were actually, I found it a bit confusing because I know that they're another one of the lower cost options. For the same specs as the Huion, they were much closer to Wacom's pricing. It was like $1,500 delivered, and I was like, that seems a little bit crazy. Yeah, and the Huions are laminated. The XP pens aren't laminated, and the screen depth is not as good.
as the Hugh Islands. So $500. Is that $500 Australian or what? What currency was that 500 of? $500 US. Yeah, okay. Interesting. Is that with like the battery-free pen and all of that kind of jazz? Interesting. Maybe, I mean, you know, maybe I was looking in the wrong spot. I don't know. I'd be curious. If you can find a link to the one you had, like the model number and stuff, throw it in the chat. Would be curious to see which one it was, see if it's the same one I was looking at. Maybe they put their prices up or something. Like everyone's putting the old COVID tax on stuff now, so who knows. But yeah, I was looking at the Hugh Island ones, because yeah, the laminated screen is kind of like, oh, it does need to charge. Okay, yeah, see, that for me is a deal breaker. I don't want to charge the pen. That is something that, even if it's like got a good battery life on it, I'm super forgetful with that stuff. And if I have to, like, you know, sit there and wait for a pen to charge if I'm trying to do work, it's like, I don't want to do that. I would 100%, I know I would annoy myself with it. Wouldn't be their fault, it would be my fault, but I know that I know 100% that I would end up screwing myself with that, which is why I think, like, yeah, because the one I looked at didn't have a battery free pen, and I was like, oh, and it's more expensive than the Hugh Ion one. No thanks. But yeah, laminated screen on the Hugh Ions is really nice because it means you get no parallax between where the tip of the pen is and where the cursor is on screen. And I tried out an XP pen that a mate has as well, and they don't have laminated screens, and the parallax is totally fine. So it's not like that's a deal breaker, but yeah, the pen for me would be a deal breaker. But each, you know, everyone's got their own preference. If you're not as forgetful as me, then it's probably not an issue. I mean, yeah, if it does the job, it does the job. Not going to knock it, absolutely. If you're happy with it, then it's the right one for you. It's the way that stuff works. And I think it's really good now that there are these different alternatives, because before it was very much like, if you wanted a good, keep calling them Cintiqs, even though that's only the Wacom ones, but if you wanted a good screen tablet like a Cintiq, you had to get a Wacom, because it's the only ones that were any good. The rest of them were just before the patents ran out on the stuff that Wacom uses for their pen technology. The rest of them were just not good. But now that everyone has that tech, well, it does seem XP Pen is maybe playing catch up a little bit still. It means that it's a little bit more of a level playing field, which is good, because Wacom had a bit of a silly monopoly on that stuff for a while. You know, you just want everyone to be able to get the tools that work the best for them, and having a Cintiq or something like it will definitely not make you necessarily a better artist, but if it enables you to be more productive or feel more comfortable in what you're doing, then it may actually help you produce better work, which is good. That looks like a dog's head. Oh well. silly Wacom thing popping up reminded me the other reason that I wasn't super jazzed on the XP pen when I looked at it was because it had so many buttons on it, and I was like, I'm just going to turn all of them off, and I don't want to pay for something that I'm not going to use. And the Huion has no buttons, which is okay with me. I don't like hotkeys on my Wacoms. Just like to use the keyboard like the crotchety old man that I am. Yeah, no, I always just turn all that stuff off. It's you either just end up hitting them accidentally, or you have to like remember, like it's a new bit of muscle memory to remember like which one's which, and it's just I don't got time for that. Just use my keyboard. No, it's just more of a, I mean, yeah, you'd probably call it a little bit more of a, it's an illustration, more so than a comic. So I'll show you the background of it in a sec. I would call it concept art because I'm kind of doing this because I want to develop the visuals of this project out so that it can be, it's something that I've, been doing a bit of writing for and that kind of stuff as well. So I would like this to be ultimately, in a perfect world, at some point made into a animation. So this is essentially concept art for the visual development of that. But yeah, definitely not a comic. I did try and do a comic for this, a long time ago, and I just did not have the patience for it. You know, maybe I'll come back to that later on, but probably not, if I'm being honest. Comic art did not really speak to me. Not my cup of tea. Very uneven hat. So we could actually adhere to his cranium, that would make sense. My art station, it is, I don't know what the actual link is, hang on, let me go have a look. It's Ned Rogers, if you want to search for my name. I don't think there's any other Ned Rogers-ies. Yeah, actually, yeah, just Ned Rogers. Lowercase. I'll put it in the chat for you. Have a look. Bit of shameless self-promotion. There we go. I assume that went through. I don't know. Let's see. Should have. There we go. Yep. So is that, did I get, I think I got all, that's like all the all the lines, I think, almost, pretty much. This is the bit where I figure out I did it on the wrong layer or something. Let's just overdraw some of these a little bit, just in case it kind of ends up needing a little bit more real estate in the final drawing, even though it's going to be masked out. And then yeah, let's just let's copy this. And take it back to the original plate. So I'm not sure if you were around then, Sam, but you'll get this is what it actually looks like, what the background's going to look like. Let's turn that off. So we've got this, which is at the moment just a fully 3D background plate. Let's copy our lines in, which obviously I've done them much bigger, and just scale them down a bit. I'll separate these two into two different layers, and then we can just copy them down. And then obviously, you know, it shouldn't be too hard to get them aligned with where they need to go. It's a fun little, this is a little, I can't remember, someone told me this a long time ago. Good little trick for like lining up sketches like this if they're a different size. You just line up, like, you find one bit that kind of sticks out like a point. I'm just going to use this like little section of the hat there. If you just line that up vaguely where that needs to go and then hit Control T to get into transform, you take the handle here, which is the pivot handle for the transform, you put that right over that point there, and that way if you hold down Alt and Shift, it will then basically constrain everything towards that point, which is then kind of stuck over the right section, and then you can just kind of wait until the rest of it just kind of falls into place like that, and it's kind of it's a lot easier than trying to do the alternative, which if we do that with the other one here, it's kind of like, you know, just doing normal transforms and kind of getting it vaguely in the right spot and then going, oh, it needs to be a bit bigger, and moving it again and making it a bit bigger and again and a bit bigger. You just start with it big. She's going to be easy because she's got really spiky hair, although actually let's use the thumb, because then if we do it on the hair there, it's going to be scaling right towards the edge of the box, which will be a bit tricky. Find the pivot point here. You can actually just alt click anywhere you want in the transform box, and that'll put the pivot point there, and then hold down Alt, and just let the whole thing kind of just pop into place. Of course, it doesn't really matter with these because the sketch underneath is not final anyway, but just getting vaguely stuff in the right spot. Yeah, so that should give us our characters under there. And next step is the most boring bit, which is just like we do have these, but yeah, these are not going to fit anymore. So the next bit is kind of boring, which is just doing the flats. I think for a lot of this, like it's not. Yeah, we should probably gonna have to go through and just do the flats the normal way. Which is boring as hell, but just gonna pick a nice, easy to see color in here. Just go through and do this. This like work is going to keep the lines there, so can be a little like we can kind of let the lines finish some of these really fine points and edges and stuff like that. And then once we've got a good little outline here, we can go through and just fill it in with auto selections. But yeah, this bit sucks. This bit is way easier on a Cintiq. I'd pay $800 just to not have to do this. We'll have to do a slightly shorter stream today. Like we'll have to, because I did start late, but unfortunately got some other stuff that I have to go and do this afternoon, so I won't be able to really run out the full 2 hours here, unfortunately. But we can go maybe like an extra 10 minutes or so. Let's just try and get the mask. Let's get the flats done so they're there. At least I can go to bed tonight knowing that I don't have to do this again for this painting. And I've kept with the line work too, some areas here I've kind of kept the internal shapes a little bit not drawn into, which is because I'm going to paint into those and get a bit of that form change in paint as opposed to in line. So that's the reason why some of these, like the pants and stuff, are a little bit more simplistic, or shorts I guess, a little bit more simplistic because I know that I'm going to go and paint in some interior detail there. But yeah, it's good to get back to this because, like I said, I've said this a few times. Like this originally was a piece I started a long time ago. I thought I'd lost the file, found the file, oops, which was good. That made me happy. And so now it's finally coming into fruition. So I'm just selecting inside the lines there, and then just using the expand selection command to just push the selection out a little bit further so that it absolutely overlaps the line work. Sorry, not the line work, but like the interior of the fill. So you can kind of see there, if I fill that now, that's going to just create that gross edge around the side. So I just go select, modify, expand, 3 pixels, 4 pixels, whatever, doesn't matter, as long as it doesn't go over the line, and then we can go in there and do that, which makes life easier. And for that, we can just use the selection tool there. And yeah, the reason I don't use the selection tool for this stuff is one, it's fiddly as hell, and that selection tool just loves to autocomplete and screw with you. And the other one is just using a brush gets you that slightly softer edge, which I like. Just learned something new. Cool. Happy to help. One of those weird little things that you would have gone your entire life probably not knowing it was there. And been totally fine, but it's one of those little time-saving things. I actually have, I'm not on my own computer at the moment. On all of my work machines, I always make sure that I've got a keyboard shortcut set up to Control-Alt-Shift+ for expand and Control-Alt-Shift- for subtract selection. So you can just very quickly do this without having to go into a menu. But yeah, it's a really handy thing for doing flats. It means you can just you don't have to fiddle around with painting out those fringes on fills. Because if you do it with the fill tool, you can get it to not make the fringe, but then it'll also generally expand your fill too far outside the lines as well, which is a massive pain. So this fixes that problem. There's probably a more efficient way to do this. I'm sure someone knows a better way of doing this. But magic wand, then inverse. Which bit do I magic wand? I know there is a technique with the magic wand to do it, but I've never actually taken the time to look into it. If you could explain that to me, I'd be very appreciative. If it works. So outside the line work. Oh, okay, I see. Yeah. I see what you mean. Let's fill this one, then see if it works for the other character. I think that's what Tim McBurney does. Hang on, where is he? There he is. Okay, so I guess like that wouldn't. I'd have to like draw a line across there, right? Because that wouldn't work otherwise. Well, we can do that because that's going to be it anyway. So like that. I guess across here too. Like, yeah, because if I do like out, yeah, it has to be contiguous. I don't know, because I get like little breaks in my characters and stuff like that, which the magic wand tool wants to like go in. Maybe I'll check out like a tutorial or something to do that. I get what you mean, and I have seen people do similar things to that, but I'm not. I think there's probably something I'm missing there, which I'd have to go and have a look at. And I will sit here and do it my old stupid way until I can learn how to do it the other way. But thank you for the suggestion. But I think I'll check it out. Check out the one of Art Germ's streams. It's the kind of thing I'm sure there's a million tutorials on YouTube for that kind of stuff. There always is. I just haven't gone looking, you know. Because in a lot of ways, actually, I do kind of find this stuff this process, like it's a little relaxing. It can be a bit frustrating, but it's also kind of relaxing in the sense that you can just listen to a podcast or whatever, or watch an episode of something on Netflix when you're doing flats, because then you really don't have to think about it. Don't usually like to watch distracting things when I'm working, but when you're doing flats, it doesn't require much of your brain.
creature in the background. It's probably great for audio. And we'll do those effects on a separate layer, so that can be messy down the bottom. It doesn't matter. Alright, so there we've got our characters in the scene. Line work is done. Always just like to check what it looks like again without the lines, just to... Wait, what layer is it? 5, 9, 6? No, that one? Yeah. Let's just put these, let's melt that back together. Cool, I think that's going to work pretty well. Yeah. Thanks, Sam. Yeah, I kind of get sick of it, but not everything can be photoreal, you know. It's nice. It's never been a style that, one, I've been particularly good at doing, and two, you know. Oh no, God! Take a bunch of backward steps. I accidentally just flatten the lines down to the color. That would be dumb. Lines. Let's actually name these layers. Fill. There we go. All right. Cool. Awesome. So, yeah, next week I guess we will work into this. I don't know. Maybe I kind of want to do this like sooner rather than later. So maybe I'll work on this a little bit between streams. But yeah, we'll leave some stuff there. We're gonna do a little bit of do some effects painting in the background. Just do some comping and stuff like that. To get these things, and obviously mixing these two different renders together, because there's some reflections that I really like from the Cycles one, and then there's some of the lighting from the Eevee one, which I think kind of is a little bit nicer. So just need to do a little bit of masking in that regard, and a little bit of painting, and just treating the surfaces and all that kind of stuff, and just getting the whole frame working. But yeah, yeah, Blender is kick-ass. You can do a lot of stuff in Blender. So yeah, it's worth learning for sure. All right, cool. So yeah, like I said, we'll have to leave it there for today, guys. But thanks for hanging out. And yeah, if you're watching this after the fact as well, just remember that this does go up live Thursdays at 2 p.m. Australian time. Yeah, you can just hang out, come ask some questions, watch me do some random stuff. Then Alex has got one on Wednesdays as well, the day before at the same time, doing 3D stuff as well. So if that's your bag, you can watch him do his 3D stuff on Wednesday, and you can watch me do every weird mix of stuff on Thursdays. All right, guys, take it easy, and I'll catch you next week.